those last few seconds of emotion, of thoughts, of your mindset, at the end of that life, whether you died a young person, whether you died middle age or in your old age, what are you carrying with you? If you are connected to a negative event, negative person, a traumatic experience, a toxic relationship, a past life, if you're connected to them, I want you to pull out that cord. Once the healing has happened, again, maybe with water, maybe with light, maybe with energy, maybe with something else. But at the end of that, we're going to pull out those cords, or you're going to pull out those cords. Maybe there's one, maybe there's 200. Maybe they're small, maybe they're tiny, maybe they're big, maybe they're medium, maybe they're behind, maybe there's just a big one in your heart. This is a private thing. And one aspect of this I don't think I mentioned, but
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative moments that shift our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Jummie Moses, spiritual seeker and metaphysical investigator, exploring the mysteries of existence. On the show today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Craig Merriweather. Craig is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist, and founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. His passion lies in the spiritual and transformational aspects of hypnosis, guiding clients through past lives, soul memories, and connection with higher guidance. He's also the creator of Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy and author of the Past Lives Guidebook, a practical and mystical resource that explores how healing unfolds through the journey of the soul. Craig, welcome to Shifting Dimensions. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
hey, Jummie, I'm really excited to be here. And I know a lot of people say that, but I love talking about this, and I know it's an interest of yours, so it's going to be a fun conversation.
It's going to be a great conversation. I love talking about all things past lives because it pulls in this idea of space, time, and conscious. There's just so many topics built into the topic of past life regression. And I love that we're going to be able to talk about that. Also, I love the picture
Yeah.
behind you with the hummingbird, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really nice.
exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think you can see it. There's a little dot right by my head. That's a hummingbird clock. Somebody made me a hummingbird clock, but I had to take out the battery because it was clicking too hard. But
Oh, okay, nice. And now I have to ask, this is such a
Mhm.
tangent, but is there a significance for with hummingbirds in you? Is that a favorite bird of yours or something?
Yeah, it's a favorite animal, favorite bird. I don't know why it's significant. I don't know why I'm attracted to it. It just is. And I needed some artwork on my wall, and I found that. And so I thought that would be perfect. And yeah, it's
Oh, okay, nice. Maybe there's a past life connected to
yeah,
hummingbirds.
maybe.
Speaking of past lives, so I want to jump right in. So here's your book, guys.
Mhm.
I love this book. For those who are listening on the audio, it's the Past Lives Guidebook. It's pretty thick. It's very comprehensive, and I just think the things you cover in this book is just so important because you're not just talking about past lives and the regression piece of it. You're talking about the re the nature of reality and how past life regression potentially works, talking
Mhm.
about the collective consciousness, how people are able to tap into their past lives. Is it actually their past lives or just this collective database that they're pulling from? It's just really cool stuff. And I love that you take the reader through different cultures who've explored past life regression in different ways or embedded it into their spiritual tradition. So I want to talk about all of this. But before we get into that, I want to hear more about your story. How did you become interested in past life regression?
I don't know. It was kind of like the slow burn, the frog in the pot of water, only in a good way. I've always been fascinated by spirituality and religion in and of itself, like traditions and the rituals of it. Ever since I was a little kid, even I grew up in the Episcopal Church, which is Catholicism light in the Protestant Church of England. And I liked the robes and the candles and the ceremony around it, even as a kid, and being an acolyte and getting to be a part of that. And even growing up into my teenage years and in my 20s and 30s, it was still a huge part of it. I grew up in San Diego, California, and then moved to Santa Cruz, California, to go to UC Santa Cruz University there. And it was such an eye-opening experience. This was late 80s. And it was such an eye-opening experience because there were so many different kind of cultures and traditions to explore and to learn about. There's so much music going on, so much different kind of dance and all sorts of different kind of martial arts or meditation and all sorts of things to explore and to experiment and to discover. And it opened up just this wide ocean of information that I was kind of insulated into my little shoebox of what I thought spirituality was in my religious upbringing. And so it opened up a whole new way of thinking and understanding. This is the 1990s at this point, and still no internet, but there's so much more information, so many bookstores just in the downtown area that you could explore. And while there's some parts of the kind of metaphysical bookstore that at that point rolled my eyes at because it was new to me, it was different, and I don't know about that. It just expanded the more I learned and more I understood. And you end up investigating so many different kind of cultures that have a reincarnation tradition and background in that. And of course, that would lead to past life investigation, past life memories, past life regression. And as I just explored and discovered that, it opened up my mind more because a lot of the books you would read would have these extraordinary stories of reincarnation or that were verifiable. A lot of research had been done, even like the Ian Stevenson's books, and not just so much the Brian Weiss, but because some of the books like Brian Weiss is discussing a specific person's experience. But what's interesting about Ian Stevenson and some of the others is that they would go and investigate these stories that are extraordinary and go to the next town to find out if it was accurate. And so that opened the kind of evidence around it, started opening it up more and more. And while I was going through my own struggles of anxiety and depression and things that I'd grown up with that I needed to resolve and to heal, one of the things that helped me along my own healing was hypnotherapy. As I got into the 2000s, there's more not only information about depression because of the SSRI drugs that had come out in the 90s, Prozac and things like that. So the conversation was more open at that point in the early 2000s. But of course, at that point, you had the internet and you were able to do a lot more investigation about that and what one thing leads to another. And one of the tools that people were speaking about was hypnotherapy, accessing your own subconscious to heal the deep heat, the deep hurt, and the pain. And so I was using that. And again, it's one of those things, everything kind of fits together. And one other deeper aspect of hypnotherapy is past life regression, using that altered state of consciousness, which again is just, it's not even so much a mystical state, more a biological state of moving down to that alpha and theta brainwave state. And things we all can access multiple times a day, even whether you're bored in class or you're bored at work and your mind drifts away, the alpha brainwave state, the daydreaming state. So it's all something we can access. And that's why hypnotherapy can be such an extraordinary healing technique. But going deeper into that is, again, the more mystical aspects of, can you access those past life memories? Can you tap into your higher self and communicate with spirit guides, with ancestors? And it fascinated me so much. And again, it's those synchronicities, those coincidences. And eventually, later in life, I was able to pivot a bit in my career and got the opportunity to train as a hypnotherapist. And the school I went to, the Hypnotherapy Academy of America in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the reason I chose that school, one was its extensive training. It's 500 hours. So this isn't some couple of videos you watch on a weekend kind of training. This is a real school you go to. You sit in a classroom with other students, teacher up front. You hear lectures and the scientific validity behind this work. You maybe see a demonstration up at the front of class, and then you break up in your small groups and you work with each other with a coach in the room. It's extraordinary training. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And this isn't a history class in college. It's 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is 9 a.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then homework on weeknights and study groups on weekends. But the last 2 weeks of this 10-week education This 10-week training, 5 modules, 2 weeks each. The last 2 weeks is past life regression. And so you gain this foundation of the more clinical side of it, dealing with trauma, dealing with the hurt and the pain, the anxiety, and the fears, and the lack of confidence, and all these various things that the subconscious mind can maybe try to armor ourselves with these negative feelings and this mindset that may be unresourceful to us. And we learn about that in the medical hypnosis of pain control, healing acceleration. That's the foundation. And then on top of that, you put in 2 weeks of 100 hours of past life regression and natal regression and spirit guides and all that. And the reason I picked that school was because of that last 2 weeks. It was so fascinating to me. And while most of my time lately I've been to get started with this work was more the more traditional therapeutic side of it, of trauma and anxiety relief and building confidence and things like that. What's always fascinated me was the more esoteric side of it, the past life regression. And I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. Mainly my work is online sessions, virtual sessions. I work with, and which is nice because I can work with people around the country and around the world, and I'm allowed to live in a beautiful small town and I can work with people around the country and around the world, including past life regression. But I live, if anybody knows where Flagstaff, Arizona is, it's super close to the Grand Canyon and Sedona, Arizona. And when I was first starting out, I kind of saw Sedona as that's where all the mystical work is happening. And there was other people doing past life regression down there. And I thought, let's hold in a flashlight next to a lit up football stadium. It's like, how do you make inroads into that? And I thought maybe it'd be better to kind of start off with working on the more clinical side while still working with people past life regression if they're interested and stuff. But over the last few years, this calling, if you will, this passion of spirituality, which is I still love studying, I still exploring and discovering and doing my own work. At one point, I just thought, I really want to focus on that. Now that I understand how virtual sessions can work so well, it's really opened up my abilities. Okay, I don't have to worry about Sedona so much anymore. I can open up to the world. And so I wanted to investigate a little more and started to expand a little more. And through my own curiosity, I thought, oh, maybe I'll write a book. That's a nice way to introduce yourself to people who are interested in the subject, and got a little carried away. And a year later, I have this book and filled with research around the science of past life regression. You're talking about some of the other cultures. So we do a brief history of spirituality and past life regression and reincarnation, but going all the way back to Neanderthal burial sites. We start there. This interest at the very dawn of humanity that there's something more than this. And it starts seemingly way back when. And so we move forward, and some of the work is other cultures throughout time, understanding of reincarnation and karma, and even future exploration and prophecy. There's all sorts of science behind it. You were mentioning at the very beginning. Yeah, this involves consciousness and memory and time. And what kind of research has been done around memory? What kind of research has been done about where consciousness resides? And it's fascinating beyond belief. And the back of the book is something like, I don't know, 450 pages. And a little bit of that is a bibliography. But I didn't put the whole big bibliography in because all this research around the different cultures and the science around memory and consciousness and remote viewing and all this, it was going to be 70 pages. And I was, I don't want to, that makes the book even heavier and more expensive to print and all that. So I put it online, but that's the research that was done. This isn't just me hoping or guessing. It was a lot of look into what is science saying about this? What do the anthropologists say about this? What does history point to in terms of this work? And here in America, we're actually one of the few few societies, few cultures, you can call the American society a culture that doesn't really focus on past lives or ancestor veneration or communicating with the ancestors. It's actually a new thing that we all merged here into America and forgot all that, seemingly. And it's fascinating to have done this research and throughout my own curiosity, just to learn about it myself and find out that, yeah, there's pretty much almost every seemingly society and culture has some sort of connection to past lives or reincarnation and their ancestors. And yeah, it's fascinating to find out because, again, a lot of the book was my own curiosity and my own questions I wanted to answer. And I thought, well, maybe if I ask the questions, maybe other people are interested as well. And what I say in the introduction is, yeah, I'm a true believer in all this as well as a skeptic. Sometimes I don't know. Does that sound right? Is that possible? What's the research behind it? And so that was what's fascinating about it, is looking for the answers.
And that's why I really appreciate this book because, like you said, it is pretty big, but it's an easy read. I haven't finished it, but I went through a few chapters that caught my attention the most ahead of this podcast. And I plan on going back to actually fully finish the book, but it's pretty easy to read through. Super, it's not super dense. You know what I'm talking about. There's some
Yeah,
books
yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
the writing and everything is so hard to get through, but this is an easy read, in my
Yeah,
humble opinion.
I appreciate that. And that was semi done on purpose. And I know I have a bit of a whimsical writing style, and I hope that allows it to be a fun read when you're looking at science and you're looking at complicated subjects like consciousness and memory. But one of my favorite chapters was the remote viewing chapter,
Hmm.
where we look at all the government research into remote viewing, where you can seemingly focus your attention on another part of the world, if not another part of the universe, maybe focus your attention into the future and maybe into the past. And it's not wishful thinking, it's not science fiction. This is real government research that our taxpayer dollars paid for that got released through the Freedom of Information Act. So it's out there. And it's fascinating to think that they spent years because this didn't work. They would have just done it for a few months and say, this is the science isn't backing this up. But they were having researchers from Stanford look at this stuff. And they did it for decades. And assumingly, if it works, they're still doing it. They say they closed it down, but I don't know, maybe they just moved to the office across the hall and called it something else. Because if it works, why would you stop doing it? And they did this research for decades and had pretty extraordinary results. And so when you look at this kind of stuff, like remote viewing, like the government research and the millions of dollars they put into it over decades to look at this unique skill that some people, if maybe all of us, have. If it's possible to do this, then maybe past lives are a real thing we can connect into and look at. Another part of the research, and one of the names you'll find mentioned throughout the book, is Dr. Michael Newton, because his work is so extraordinary in his books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And if you don't know who he is, really quickly, he in 1969, he's a psychotherapist. He passed away in 2011. In 1969, he accidentally regressed somebody, one of his patients he was working with, back to soul world, the soul state, what he eventually started calling life between lives. And he was trying to get this person back to childhood, maybe when they're 5 years old or something, to help deal with the trauma and the overwhelm this person was dealing with. So he's just doing quote unquote regular regression therapy back to childhood to create some healing around that. And again, accidentally, quote unquote, accidentally regress them back to the spirit world, the spirit realm. And he was so fascinated by this that he started working with people to see if other people could do it, and if there could be created a protocol on how to get people back into that state of spirit, state of mind, state of body, maybe. And he developed this process over the course of several years, working with hundreds of people. And in the 70s, as he was doing this work, this kind of under the table work, because you're not going to, as a professional psychotherapist, he's not announcing to the world that he's doing this esoteric, mystical kind of work. But he's working with people, and what he notices is that people are having similar experiences of the soul world, of life between lives. And these people don't know each other. We don't even have fax machines at that. Well, you have fax machines, but you don't have fax machines in your homes. You basically have rotary telephones. There's no internet. These people have no way of communicating with each other. There's no YouTube or anything like that. There's no way to get this information. And so he's working with people from different cultures, different age groups from around the country who don't know each other, have no way of communicating with each other, and they keep having similar experiences of soul world and what it's like. So he spends the 70s and all of the 80s. So he spent about 15, 16, 17 years researching this with thousands of people. And in 1992, the book Journey of Soul comes out, and that's the big chunk of that 16, 17 years of research. Here's what soul world seems to be, according to thousands of people who have had similar experiences. He then does another decade's worth of work, working with thousands more people. And that decade's worth of work and working with thousands of people becomes Destiny of Souls, which is even bigger, about twice as big as Journey of Souls. And again, this isn't like this information is being channeled to one person. This isn't maybe more like a book like Brian Weiss's book. Here's 3 or 4 or 5 different people's stories. This is the work of thousands of people over 30 years. And it's fascinating stuff. And so between things like the work of Michael Newton, let alone the thousands of sessions, people like Dolores Cannon and Brian Weiss, and they all seemingly have similar experiences, or even just the ability to have a past life memory. Now, we can have a long discussion about whether people are actually experiencing a past life. Maybe it's a construct of the subconscious mind for healing. I think sometimes that's what it is, but that doesn't negate the people who have real past life experiences that are verifiable, that people who have seemingly reincarnated as somebody. And you probably heard the crazy stories. If you're listening to a podcast like yours, Jummie, they probably heard the crazy stories, seen the documentaries on YouTube about the children who tell the stories that there's no way they could have this information. There's no way they could understand this and know about this family and all their kind of secret pet names for each other, or the animals they used to have, or what they always ate on Monday night for dinner. And they'd have all this information. And one story is interesting. 2 stories is strange. 3 stories is a bit of a coincidence. But when you have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of stories over the last 70 years that people have been investigating, after a while, you just got to say, there's got to be something to this.
Absolutely.
Because what I find fascinating is when you have a deeper discussion with somebody about these topics of reincarnation or past life, and using regression to have access those past life memories. And whether you want to do it for fun, or you just want to explore, you want to deepen your own spiritual journey, or you need some healing, I think we all have the ability to access these memories. But when you're having that conversation with somebody, and they're saying, I don't believe any of that stuff, I just think this is a one and done. We have this consciousness, we have this life, we do the best we can, and then on our last day, it's lights out. And that's it. Okay, what's your evidence to that? It's just what I believe. Here's all the evidence to reincarnation and to past lives and to remote viewing and to memory and to consciousness. And yeah, but I'd rather not believe that. And maybe there's some fear around that, or maybe it's just some inability to wrap your head around it because it's not our culture. But it's a fascinating discussion to have with people, whether they believe or don't believe in it, because it allows us the ability to understand ourselves as souls who are here to learn and to grow. And if you can see the wider picture of that, it's okay, we keep coming back and we keep having these experiences so we can learn and grow as a soul, which is a big part of the Michael Newton books. It opens up a level of life that I think makes it a little more interesting and enjoyable for being here, as tough as it can be sometimes.
Definitely. And I think when I first stumbled upon this idea of past life regression, reincarnation in general, that was something that illuminated my mind to be able to take a bird's eye view of what it means to be a human being.
Mm.
Because the idea that we can have multiple lives as multiple people from different vantage points, there was something in your book that I thought was very interesting, which I planned on asking you. And as I was reading your book, you answered it, but I'm still going to ask it here. But there was something you were talking about, the fact that when we think about past lives, we think that they happen in chronological order and you move from one time period to the next time period to the next time period. But you talked about the fact that someone can have multiple past lives within the same time period, but from different vantage points. And I
Yeah.
think you gave the example of, I think, was it World War
World
One
War II. Yeah,
or
the
World
World
War
War II
Two?
example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's just a theory.
That's a theory, but I like
I
that
don't
theory. I
again,
think
that's a fascinating one because the idea that you're talking about is if we're here to learn and grow. And I think there's this idea out there that even in past lives, time moves linearly. So we can only have our next life is going to be in the 2100s. And the life after that's going to be in the 2200s. And the life after that's going to be in the 3200s. We can never seem to go back. Okay, I'm having this life here in the 2000s and I'm learning and growing. And I think next life I'll go back to the 1400s. And the life after that, I'll go back to 500 BC. And the life after that, I'll go to 3200. I don't understand, considering how much we know about time and that time seems to be stacked, that as opposed to maybe going from left to right or the past is behind us and the future is in front of us. If it was stacked vertically, it can all be happening actually at the same time. And there's lots of this in the book about time, and it gets real in-depth and actually confusing. But in terms of if we're here to learn, why wouldn't you learn from the same kind of experience over and over again? So the theory around the World War II example is that why wouldn't you, if you're here to learn, would you be able to learn by experiencing World War II from different viewpoints? As the American soldier running onto Normandy Beach, as the German Gestapo agent, as a Polish Jew running through fields to get on a train to get out of there before the Germans show up, as a British housewife during the Blitz. Would you be able to learn and grow from having these different vantage points? And wouldn't it make more sense if you did? And would it be possible even to be having these experiences almost maybe at the same time? Because that's where it gets a little mind twisty. Because if there is no time, and even we can go back to the work of Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr back in the 1920s and 30s, that this whole time is a construct of our minds. We sense it because we get older. We see our children go from babies to being adults. We see ourselves getting older. So we see this time in the past, we see this time in the future, and we see ourselves growing minute by minute. But in essence, that's not how time works. And there's an idea, especially if you want to, if you're adhered to the computer simulation theory, that this is all a computer game that we're playing. It's like my son, and it was another example I use in the book, like my son gets at a certain time of day, maybe 5 o'clock, he gets on the computer because he knows his other friends, maybe down the block or maybe around the country or around the world, are going to get on at the same time. Whatever their time zone in, we're all going to meet at this time. And they decide we're going to play this game and have this adventure, and we're going to level up our skills and our talents and level up in this game. And here's the skills we need, and here's the character I'm going to be playing, and here's what I'm going to need to move through this existence in this game. And what if he had a computer and he's playing this game, but he's in one of those kind of donut desks? He's in the middle of a round desk, and he had 7 different computers that are all playing a different game. Could he not focus on one game and then move to another game really quickly and gain information from that game that he could use in the game he's playing? And could those games be played in 5 BC and 1500s and 500 AD and 3200 BC in the quote unquote future? And could he not move through these different games and these different existences, gaining information and knowledge that he will be able to use in the game he's really focusing on? And again, these are all kind of theories and ways of having our 3D existence explain really complicated
Concepts.
concepts of time and consciousness and memory and all that.
But I do think it is a valid theory. And we just jumped right into the conversation, but I assume that everyone listening, you touched on this at the beginning, that about what past life regression is, but we didn't give a by the book definition. If you just want to quickly give a high level overview of
Sure,
what really is past life regression, and then I can jump back into what I was trying to say.
sure. The idea is that we are souls. Again, this is more of the Michael Newton research and the Michael Newton information in his book Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. So we'll just focus on that as a way to anchor this. And the idea around the research he did for some 30, 40 years is that we are souls and that we've come to Earth, if not other worlds and other planets. But again, that's an even longer, bigger conversation. But let's just focus on Earth. We come to Earth again and again to learn, to grow, and to develop. So as souls, we get placed in these groups, these soul families, our soul mates. And this group of, let's say, 8, 9, 10 souls, we move together and grow together and learn together because we keep interacting with each other in these lives on Earth. Hence, you can interact with your soulmates on Earth. And we have multiple soulmates. You may have a primary soulmate, maybe somebody you're consistently in a romantic relationship with over and over again in different lives, but oftentimes we play different roles. And as if you were in a class of 10 other people in first grade, and you just move up together through the grades, through high school, through 12th grade, you graduate, you end up all getting your master's degree in life. And so you all grow up together, you learn and you grow and you help each other. And another analogy would be like the theater troupe. And so if they're in your town, there's maybe a local theater troupe, a community theater troupe of 10 different actors, and they decide upon maybe 6 different plays they're going to do throughout the year. Each play has a different story, has a different theme, has a different way these characters are going to learn and grow. And as an actor, you're playing this role and you're going to learn and grow as an actor, as an actress, doing these roles. And then you can do that play, and that play is going to end. And you take a little break, and then you come back and you do another play, and you all play different roles. You wear different costumes. It's a different time period. And you're still the same, you're still a soul. You just may be playing a different part. And while in one life you may be boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, and wife, the next you may be your mother, daughter, or your best friends, or your boss employee, or you're just the person you knock into as you're walking around the corner, drop your cup of coffee, which sends off a whole nother alignment of events and circumstances. And so we all play these different roles in the lives of our soulmates, of our soul family. And so we come back to Earth again and again for these learning experiences. Now, they have what's kind of called this veil of amnesia, where we're not really allowed to know those past lives because it interferes, or maybe our brains can't handle all that information, or it complicates the learning and the development we're supposed to do. But given certain circumstances, and children are really good at this, if you ask a child about their past lives, or if they remember anything beyond the life they have right now, it can be quite fascinating and eerie. But we all seem to have the ability as humans to move into a quiet state, a meditative like state. It's not meditation, but it's a very relaxed restful state of mind and body, access higher self, and see those memories. Now, it's not unlike if I was to ask somebody, I'm having a conversation with somebody and say, hey, why don't you tell me about what you had for dinner last night? We're not having dinner right then, but they can tell me about the dinner they had and how wonderful and how it smelled and how good it tasted. And then I can ask, tell me about that vacation you took a year ago when you went to the beach. Or tell me about that meeting you had at work a month ago where everything got out of hand and that person got fired. Or tell me an experience you had in high school. They're not in high school. They're not going back to high school. They're just remembering. They might even be closing your eyes. Oh, I remember prom and it was like this, it was like that. Maybe they played sports or they're in a band or something. And they remember this experience. Maybe they remember that beach vacation. They can even tell you about the smells of the ocean and the gentle lapping waves onto the shore, and they feel the warm breeze on their skin. They're having a reaction, and even physical reaction, because they can smell the smells, and maybe they're remembering dinner from a year ago when they were in Paris, and they get their taste buds get all excited because they can remember tasting all that food. They're having a memory. And what we do with past life regression is we just take it a step further. And you're now remembering a past life. So it's like you're swimming in the same pool. It's just when I'm asking you about what happened last week or a memory from high school, or maybe even when you were a little kid, what's the earliest memory you have? We're swimming in the shallow end of the pool. All we do with past life regression is we just go over to the deep end. It's the same pool. It's just now we're heading over to the deep end. We have a little more confidence. We feel a little more comfortable. We feel we can do this in a safe and gentle way. We head over to the deep end. We have a focus of what we want to look at. And with your intention, with your willingness to relax your mind and body, and with that focus of, I want to look at this, that, or the other thing, A, B, C, and or D, then you can focus your attention onto a past life. It can be very general. Go back to the past life that is most influencing your current life. But you need to turn on the TV and turn it to a channel. If you know exactly what you want to watch, you know what channel to turn it on and all that. But with past life regression, you also want to have that focus. And so I want to look at a past life where I was really in love with my soulmate. Or I want to go back to past life where I experienced something that is causing all this deep hurt or this deep anxiety or this anger I'm feeling in this life. Or I live in the mountains of Arizona, and yet I have a deep fear of the ocean. Why is that? Why would that even appear in my life if I've never left this tiny little mountain town in Arizona? So you can focus on these things, and through tapping into your higher self, into your own inner wisdom, and even the biology of using your brain as an antenna and the pineal gland, which there's lots in the book about the pineal gland. We can go over that too. We can tap into these memories. And through those memories, through understanding what may have happened in the past with a relationship, maybe you're looking at a relationship that's gone bad, gone toxic, gone sour. Have you had any interactions that may have led up to this life with a toxic relationship? The hurt and the pain. And it it doesn't absolve people, but it can help with understanding and your own healing around issues like that. So the focus is really about the healing. It's about the insights you can gain to move forward in this life. Sometimes we have those cords attaching us to past lives because they weren't resolved or released in that past life or in the spirit realm, and there still needs to be, maybe you were sent back to create healing around it or healing with another person or something. The football team during halftime and they're getting that pep talk. And things aren't going very well. That first half didn't go very well. So let's try it again and go back out there and do better this time. Here's the plan. And so you go train. And it's not the greatest analogy in the world, but you can see how if that past life, the learning wasn't as accomplished as hoped for, because there's this weird thing of creating the agreements and the soul contracts of, we're going to play these roles, we're going to play these parts. This is the time the era we're going to be in, the part of the world we're going to be in, and yet there's still free will. You're walking down the street, you can turn left or you can turn right. Why don't you walk straight ahead? You know what? Why don't you go back to where you just came from? So you have all these various options. You can just sit down on the ground if you want. So you have these options of free will, which then, of course, creates different scenarios and different paths that people need to take. And so there's this really crazy algorithm that must get created when planning out and creating these agreements and soul contracts of who's going to play mom, who's going to play dad, how are they going to be? And that relationship that you have with your parents or your siblings or your best friend in high school, how does that help you learn, grow, and develop? Are you learning through pain and hurt? Are you learning through a more joyous way? Your mother being the way she is, how do you have to be as a human being, as you in order to deal with that? And there's a lot of hurt and pain in the world that it doesn't, again, absolve people's bad behavior or the trauma they may cause. But it's a little bit crazy and a little bit mind warpy to think about, okay, if that was planned ahead of time, what can I learn from that? How can I grow? How can I use this stress on the piece of coal to become a diamond? How can I use that pressure and that tension and even that hurt and that pain to evolve as a spirit, as a soul, and to level up? How can I get my master's degree in being a great soul? Then maybe I go on and teach the first graders or something.
I love everything that you said there because past life regression is really and truly about the healing, right? All that stuff that we've carried from lifetime to lifetime. And I do want to touch on that, but to quickly go back and close the loop on the other part of the conversation about, I think you were talking about the simulation theory, where you kind of gave the example of you used your son as an example, having seven different screens with different video games. He's different avatars, and maybe those avatars could learn from each other. And I think that's actually a pretty good theory because obviously a lot of people say that time is not linear, as we've been talking about. It's actually more of a loop, and everything is happening at once, everything everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
But it is possible. I don't know if you watched that movie, but in that movie, the main character was able to flip through her different lifetimes and wake up certain skills that she had across the different lifetimes that were happening all at once, but in parallel universes, which is also very fascinating because I don't know if you talked about this in your book. Maybe I haven't gotten there, but there's this theory of the reason why we can tap into past lives is because of the fact that parallel realities exist. And in order, we can't go back in the same timeline, but we can jump to a very similar timeline where we took the same actions and look at that. But again, that starts to get convoluted, and I don't want to confuse the audience, but I do think it's a pretty good theory. So, fast forwarding back to this whole idea of past life regression being a tool for healing across lifetimes. My question is, are there limits to this healing? Because sometimes when I hear people talk about it, it feels okay, I go back into a past life where someone kicked me on in the knee and and when I wake up from my past life regression or when I come back out of it, I no longer have knee pain. That's a very reductive example.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to make a point here that are there limits to past life healing?
Extraordinary question. And I don't think so. Because again, it's about your intention. So there's a couple of things to go over. First off, just to go back to the computer simulation theory, what I want to point out about the book, the Past Lives Guidebook, is I don't so much present a unifying theory or unifying answer by the end of it. There may be more questions by the end of it than answers, because I talk about not just computer simulation theory, but the multiverse theory and the holographic universe theory. And all these different theories all get a couple of pages. And if you want more, then there's tons and tons of books about each one of those theories on how it works. my goal with the book is just say, these are the possibilities. So and this isn't just a bunch of kind of people over a cup of coffee wondering, or a couple of science fiction writers coming up with something. These are physicists with huge math equations saying math seems to indicate that we're in a computer simulation, or looking into a cell or an atom or our DNA. It seems to indicate that. So what the book tries to, I hope, do well is link these various ideas between science and physics and biology and history and anthropology and experiences of people and the stories of people who have had reincarnation experiences. And by the end of the book, saying there's something here. I don't know that if I can, by the end of the book, there's one sentence that wraps everything up, but I think it opens up the idea that by putting all these things together, there's a pretty good chance that what Michael Newton is saying and Dolores Cannon was saying and Brian Weiss was saying is that we seem to be living as souls in multiple lives here on Earth and maybe other places. But in terms of what you're asking is what's the potential of all of this? And the potential, I think, is endless. Okay, not endless. But in terms of being humans here in this 3D world, I opened up the book. The first line of the introduction is from an email I got from somebody a couple of days after a past life regression I had done with her on Zoom. And I check in with people afterwards. I want to make sure they're okay. If they have any questions, I love talking about this stuff. And she emailed me back. He says, yeah, the hip pain I had for 20 years is gone. And I didn't even know she had hip pain. That's not what we were working on. But it was just one of those, she had chronic pain. It's just something she lived with. She'd been to the doctor. She's been to a physical therapist. She'd been to the chiropractor. She'd been to everybody. We weren't even working on hip pain. She just decided she's going to live with it. When you're talking about the healing, when in the work I do, and I focus a lot of my protocol and the way I work with Michael Newton and of course the others masters of the field, but I go through his protocol because I want to get people up into that soul world. It's fascinating to have a past life, to experience that and see the possibilities of who we were in previous lives and the kind of growing and learning we have done throughout these lives. But like you had just said, Jummie, it's like a big important part of this is the healing. Well, the healing happens up in that soul world. When we leave that life, and when we're doing a past life regression, the way I do it is we look at 4 or 5 important events in that life. If you live to be 90 years, even if we're doing a longer session, like a 3 or 4 hour session, I mean, it's 90 years. We can't go through all 90 years of that life. So even if we're being as vague or as general as go back to the past life that is most influencing your current life, we're going to hit 3 or 4 or 5 different scenes that are important to influencing this current life. So you'll arrive in that past life, experience it, what's going on, who are you, man, woman, child, teenager, adult, where do you seem to be in terms of location and time period and all this stuff. We establish the scene and what is happening. And now I'm going to count to 3 and you're going to move to the next significant event in that life, whether you're older, younger, or the same age. So you may go backwards. If you started off at the age of 30, you may go back to being 12. Again, it doesn't have to move linearly. You can move backwards, forwards. I had a past life session with somebody that took place over 3 days. It was a World War II deal. And the healing he needed to accomplish in this current life had to do with this 3-day period in World War II. And that's what we did. So instead of having this past life experience over decades and decades, it took place over about 72 hours. And okay, go to the next significant event. Okay, now it's 5 hours later. Okay, now it's the next day. And now there's only 2 of us left. It was pretty intense. And then you get to the end of that life, and whether you're passing due to old age or illness or injury or maybe even something more traumatic than that, that's the most important part, those last few seconds of emotion, of thoughts, of your mindset. At the end of that life, whether you died a young person, whether you died middle age or in your old age, what are you carrying with you? What's the throwing action to this current life that you may be experiencing some hurt, some pain, some anxiety, some anger, some physical pain? What's the connection? And it may be because at the end of the life, there's a lot of resentment. There may be issues around money or authority or being tortured or some other issue of being sick, of working so hard only to have your family pass away due to illness. And so as you move from that body into the soul state, again, what are these first experiences as a soul? And are you vowing revenge? Are you vowing to make sure that you will never love again in the way you did because it was so painful? You will refuse to be the rich person next time because you saw how horribly you treated people as a rich, these kind of tropes, but these things that really affect people. You then move back up to spirit state, basically home. And that's where healing can happen. As you reunite with your soul friends, as you your soul family, you connect with your spirit guide there, and you'll read about this in the Michael Newton books and in the Past Lives Guidebook, is that you have the opportunity to move to various places in the soul world. Now, understand when we're experiencing something like the soul state or spirit realm, we're pulling in this 5D information into a 3D world. And it has to configure with how we understand reality in a 3D world. So it may be head scratching that this is strange. I'm going to a library where there's lots of books, or I'm going into a kind of a computer room where there's lots of video screens on the wall. Maybe in spirit world, it's really not a big TV room or like a home movie theater or like a library or like a modern day library or one of those fancy old libraries in the movies with the spiral staircase that goes up to the 5th floor and all those books, or maybe something more along the lines of people in togas writing down with feather pens or something. Understand that's a construct of this 3D brain and our understanding of this 3D world as you bring in this 5D information. So we do end up every time, I do this with everyone, that we go to the healing space, the healing place, the healing room, however it gets described. And whether you go there on your own, whether you go there with your spirit guide, whether you go there and there's other healing beings there, like there's spirit doctors, spirit nurses, spirit therapists there, you will create healing from that past life and others. And if that's with water or energy or light, again, trying to pull in through a funnel 5D information down to a 3D brain. So it kind of comes up with the symbolism and these metaphors of how healing happens, but it'll come up in the way you need it to happen. And people will heal, and we take the time to heal, make sure there's enough time. At the end, we always pull out cords. And this is something that happens in therapeutic healing, in hypnotherapy, the pulling of cords. Because again, the subconscious mind, not again, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but the subconscious mind speaks in symbolism and metaphor. I mean, Sigmund Freud was talking about that. Carl Jung was talking about that. Milton Erickson was talking about that. And so we can speak back to the subconscious mind in symbolism and metaphor. And so the cords are a big part of that. If you are connected to a negative event, negative person, a traumatic experience, a toxic relationship, a past life, if you're connected to them, I want you to pull out that cord. Once the healing has happened, again, maybe with water, maybe with light, maybe with energy, maybe with something else. But at the end of that, we're going to pull out those cords, or you're going to pull out those cords. And you could see people doing that. They'll pull them out. Maybe there's one, maybe there's 200. Maybe they're small, maybe they're tiny, maybe they're big, maybe they're medium, maybe they're behind, maybe there's just a big one in your heart. This is a private thing. And one aspect of this I don't think I mentioned, but we're having a conversation during the entire past life experience and the soul world experience. And that's how you can guide and move and facilitate. You're having that experience, and my role is to help facilitate moving through that. Sometimes people may get stuck, or they may just want to experience this one aspect of it, but this needs to move forward to gain the information and the healing necessary. And so we're having a conversation, even though you're in this altered state of consciousness, even though you're in this trance state and having this past life memory, but you can describe the memory, and not unlike somebody closing their eyes. And I remember high school and we had this bake sale and I can smell the cinnamon rolls, and we raised a lot of money for going on that field trip to Washington, D.C. They can have the experience. They're having an altered state of consciousness because they're not in the present moment. They're in the alpha brainwave state, remembering something from the past. But they can communicate to me in this trance-like imaginative daydreaming state. Same as in a past life regression. So we're having a conversation, and this is also helpful for the recording. I ask lots of questions, not only, of course, to help move the healing and move the discovery forward, but also for the recording. So you have this recording and also a transcript so you can look at it later. Because my guess is, just from my own experience of past life regression, people are only talking about 10, 20% of what they're experiencing, especially in the soul world. Well, what this recording and what the transcript will help people do afterwards, a month later, a year later, when they want to revisit it, is it'll help remind them of that experience and what they said. Because we're going to ask about specific things in the past life. We're going to ask about specific things in the soul world. We're going to ask about purpose in this life, mission in this life, ultimate goals. So it's all there for the recording. It's all there in the transcript for you to research, because if it's a longer experience, even if it's a shorter experience, like a 90-minute experience, but if it's one of the longer ones, a couple weeks later, you're not going to remember everything. Like seeing a 3-hour movie, like seeing all the Godfather movies together, or seeing an Avenger film or something, or a Martin Scorsese film, and it's 3 hours, 3.5 hours. A couple weeks later, somebody asked you about that movie. Are you going to remember every single aspect of that
No.
3-hour movie? No. So there's where the recording comes in. And that's where it's important to have that conversation and that back and forth of what are you experiencing? What happens next? What color are the clothes? What does the room look like? What does it feel like to be in spirit form? What happens at the end when the soul leaves the body? Is it comfortable? Is it uncomfortable? Is it painful? Is it happy? Is it joyful? What does it feel like moving up? All these questions are being asked. And once you're in that spirit world, we move to the healing place. Again, your 3D brain will create that symbolism and that allegory and that metaphor of the healing place in the way you need it to happen. Your higher self will bring that to you in the way you need it to look. So it feels comfortable for you, feels safe to you. But that's where healing happens. And again, whether that's on your own, that's with your spirit guide, that's with maybe members of your soul family, maybe that's with other healing beings. But again, at the end, always pull those cords. Not unlike pulling the cord to your blender out of the wall. You pull those cords out of you, though. And believe it or not, I'm finally getting back to a woman who had the hip pain. I give some time for this to happen, and there's some silence there because it's a very personal and private thing to do this kind of healing. So I give the time and the privacy. And she spent minutes and minutes. Sometimes this can be 10, 15 minutes of healing, not more. And I'm checking on their ecology, making sure they're okay, encouraging, and eventually say, okay, I'm complete. People heal. That's not my business, but I make sure they're safe and they're okay. And if they want to talk about it, they can. But if I also understand that can be a very private thing, the healing that needs to happen. So we moved on to the next part of the experience. A couple of days later, I email and I say, I want to check in, make sure you're okay. You have any questions? I'd love to talk about this if you have some time. And she emailed me back, 20 years of hip pain is gone. And she talked about how she had this big cord on her hip. And she tried to pull it out and couldn't. Tried in a long time, a minute or so. Couldn't pull it out. So she asked her guide to help. Could not pull it out. And so she had all the healing beings come over and they pulled and pulled like one of those tug of war things where you have like a string of people pulling on a cord kind of thing. And finally they all pulled it out and it had been something like 3 days without hip pain. And so you can have extraordinary, and there's other stories. You read the Brian Weiss books or Dolores Cannon and extraordinary physical healings. And what's fascinating about this goes into another aspect of just being human. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think this helps explain why this can happen and why it can happen so quickly. And it goes to people who suffer through multiple personality disorder. It's now called dissociative disorder, dissociative personality disorder. But back in the day, and I think what most of us know it as is multiple personality disorder. And it's not what like in the movies. It's not an actor doing different voices and things like this. This is a real serious mental illness that what researchers and the psychiatrists and psychologists have seen that something like 97, 98% of the people with multiple personality disorder have had extraordinary trauma in their life growing up as a child, and that the mind will splinter into different personalities to help handle all that trauma because one personality can't handle all of it. So they'll split into different personalities and they'll handle their little chunk of it. But when they switch into different personalities, it's not just an actor doing a funny accent. Scars and moles will appear and disappear. Birthmarks will appear and disappear. The voice will change, but again, it's not a person doing a really good Christopher Walken or Al Pacino impersonation. The muscles along the vocal cords will expand and contract, and the voice will literally change. Eyesight will change because the muscles around in the eyeball will expand and contract and change vision. The person who's allergic to the orange juice or peanuts or something, 9 of the personalities won't be able to eat peanuts because they'll go into anaphylactic shock. The 10th will be able to eat peanuts all day long. Okay? If an adult personality takes adult level medication and then turns into the personality of a child, they can OD. And that person will have to be taken to the hospital to be resuscitated. But what's extraordinary is eye color will change. And the human chromosome, half mom, half dad. Mom has green eyes, dad has brown eyes. Choose one. And the genetic switch for brown eyes will be off, and the genetic switch for green eyes will be on. When you switch personalities, those switches will flip, and eye color will change to brown. And so when you see the possibility of the human body and what it is capable of, and understand the only difference that person was going through is a profound change in belief in who they were. Yes, that's extraordinary mental illness, and they've gone through extraordinary trauma, but it shows the potential and the possibilities of what the body can do. And so in terms of using this work to create change, even physical change, I think it's extraordinarily possible. And again, even just going back to, okay, let's say this person is not particularly having a quote unquote real past life experience, but it's a construct of the subconscious mind to create healing. Mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So could you also just, this person needs to heal, and this is how they have chosen to heal. So why wouldn't they be able to heal and quickly? I'm not saying everybody can change their eye color or all of a sudden drop the need for their glasses. It seems like it's possible that we could do that. And that's what's extraordinary. That's what fascinates me about therapeutic hypnosis, is that if there's anything that's going to help somebody get to that point of being able to do that sort of incredible kind of healing, is something like hypnotherapy that can access the subconscious mind. Take that a little bit further. Again, stop swimming in the shallow end of the pool and let's go to the deep end of the pool. What if we went a little bit beyond that and tapped into higher self and the soul? Now what kind of healing can be created, either physically or emotionally or through mindset? Now, I'm not saying this stuff, hypnotherapy or anything like this, can do extraordinary things like heal multiple personality disorder or schizophrenia or things like this. But in terms of what the research shows, in terms of accelerated healing around broken bones, certainly around hip pain that this person experienced, and things like gaining confidence and dropping hurt and pain, it seems to be an extraordinary way to heal.
Do you ever work with people who are hoping to go back to a past life to heal something, but in fact, what's brought up is their current life?
I had somebody, I worked with somebody with that, and I was really confused by it at first, and because she came to me for past life regression, and she was kind of curious, and oftentimes people they get a hold of a Brian Weiss book, and it's fascinating. His books are amazing, or Dolores Cannon, or Michael Newton, or any of the other books, Ian Stevenson, or any of the other books out there. And or maybe they saw a documentary on YouTube or something, heard a podcast, and they're fascinated by it. They want to try it in a safe and gentle way, and that's what I like to provide. I don't go too far into the esoteric because I want people to feel comfortable if this is new to them. And she wanted to explore. She was an older woman, and as I said, we do 4 or 5 different experiences in that past life, different important events or scenes. And I got her into this past life, and she kept talking about her husband. Of course, yeah, we're going to meet the people that we have in our lives. But the way she was describing it, after the second scene, when we moved to the second scene, I realized she's talking about him in this life. And by the third time, it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, move to the next important event. I realized, yeah, all the situations she wanted to heal, whether kind of the anxiety or the overwhelm or the worry that she wanted to focus on in terms of this past life, actually all had to do with her current life and her husband who was getting older and dealing with some health stuff and all that. And so her subconscious mind got her to this therapeutic appointment under the guise of wanting to discover a past life and then experience this past life, maybe out of curiosity, maybe for a little bit of fun. But having read Brian Weiss or Dolores Cannon, she said, oh, I wanted to experience this. But her subconscious mind knew that what she needed to heal was in this current life. And that's what was most important. I don't fix anybody. And hypnotherapy in and of itself doesn't fix anybody, let alone past life regression in and of itself doesn't fix anybody. Your higher self, your subconscious mind, your super conscious level mind is what is directing the healing. I can suggest, let's go to the healing place. What needs to happen now? What does it look like? How is the healing being achieved? I want you to pull out that cord. Where is it? I can maybe ask a few leading questions, but you're the one who's going to be doing the healing because who better to know what to do than yourself, your higher self, your inner wisdom. And in that particular case, her inner wisdom knew that it had to do with this current life. And maybe she was unwilling or not understanding about hypnotherapy or ignorant or just didn't want to deal with it and wanted a little relief. But her subconscious mind knew the healing needed to happen in this current life, had nothing to do with the past life. Her curiosity, her interest in discovering past life because of maybe, again, she read Brian Weiss or something else, got her to the appointment. But once in that altered state of consciousness, her subconscious mind diverted and said, no, we're going to heal what you need to heal. Like the subconscious mind, you get a cut on your finger, you get a scrape on your knee. You don't have to tell your subconscious mind, oh, I got a scrape on me. Oftentimes it's already kind of scabbing over. If somebody said, what did you do to your arm? I don't know. What is it? It's all kind of scabbed over already a little bit because you scraped it on a wall or something. The subconscious mind knows what to do. It knows where the hurt and pain is. And it will already send the healing white blood cells and the antibodies and all that, and it'll create the scab, and it'll create the new tissue, and it'll create the new skin. And after a while, you won't even remember that you had a scrape on your arm or your leg or whatever. cut on the finger. It knows what to do. It knows where the hurt is. And it knows what to do to heal it. And again, that's the extraordinariness of therapeutic hypnosis, let alone the even more powerful and mystical past life regression therapy and soul world exploration and the healing that can happen there. Your superconscious level of mind, your higher self, your subconscious mind knows what to do to heal. It knows where the hurt is, and it knows what to do to heal it. Sometimes you just need to give it that permission. It's not the greatest analogy because a cut on your finger, you don't have to give it permission to heal your finger. The scrape on the knee, it does its healing work for you. It digests your lunch. You don't have to give it permission to digest your lunch or beat your heart. It knows what to do. But sometimes in terms of the hurt and pain that we store within the subconscious mind as armor, or to prevent us from maybe doing something that might cause us pain again, we hold on to that. It's not resourceful. It's not useless for us. It's heavy and it's exhausting. And sometimes we need to give that part of our subconscious mind permission to let it go. Sometimes because of the connections to a past life, because it didn't get resolved, because we didn't get the lesson thoroughly learned, we have to repeat something, or got a C on that. Let's go for an A plus. Let's try it again, or let's try it at a different. There's various scenarios, and again, this is a long cup of coffee.
No,
Right
yeah.
now, where you talk the different scenarios, and the book's a little bit about that. Okay, what if it's holographic theory? What if it's multiverse theory? What if it's different dimensions? What if it's computer simulation? And it's a fun conversation to have. And again, I don't know that there's, into the end of the day, with our 3D brain of ours, we get any definite answers other than this seems to be something that we go through as humans.
And just as the listeners are listening, just for the listeners to clarify, because I love doing this, past life regression healing is not just physical, it could be emotional healing.
Ooh. Yeah.
Physical, emotional, even spiritual healing. It's all different layers to the healing.
Yeah.
I want to know, have you done this on yourself, right? Because I think obviously you have this breadth and depth of knowledge because of your research and because you've had numerous clients. But have you been curious enough to try it yourself just to really
Mhm.
see what, not just for your healing, but just to see what comes up for you and to see if it actually really works in terms of healing?
Oh, yeah, very much. Whether group sessions or one-on-one sessions, I've done a lot of this. And you're right, actually, to point that out. The physical healing is pretty spectacular and it's extraordinary to talk about because it's a head scratcher. That hip pain was related to a past life. That's pretty extraordinary. But I would say majority of the time, it's not physical healing people are looking for. That was more of an accidental physical healing. I didn't know she was doing it. I didn't know she had physical pain. She didn't talk about it. She didn't mention it. She was looking for something else, which she received. It's just, oh, and by the way, I pulled out that cord in my hip. But you're absolutely right. It's about the spiritual healing. It's about the emotional healing, the mindset issues around love and parents and children and friendships and money and wealth and being poor. It's about all these constructs that we have in our current life that may be related to something we experienced in a past life, whether it was the one right before this one or one many times ago. And maybe the repeated relationships that we have is like we can't get out of that loop. So what's necessary to stop this loop and this be the last life that this happens in? What learning needs to happen? So thank you for pointing it out because that's really important. It's not just because we all are, yes, bodies, but of course we're all souls and have emotions and thoughts and feelings and all that. But in terms of, oh my God, I forgot the question. I got so excited about the emotional and spiritual part of the healing.
I
What
can
did you
repeat
ask
it.
me?
I asked, have you done
Oh,
past
have
life
I done it? That's
regression?
right. That's
Yes.
right. I got so excited. Yeah, I've done it many times. In fact, when I was going to Hypnotherapy Academy, as I mentioned before, we work with each other. So we not only play the role of the hypnotherapist, we rotate, and then I sit in the recliner, and then the other person is the hypnotherapist, and there's a coach there, observing, encouraging, all that. But you do experience it. So you not only learn about it and learn how to be the hypnotherapist and create that healing for a person, you experience it. and you create the healing. So when we got to past life regression, I did a lot. And because we're doing like 5 or 6 a week, because there's at least one a day in school, if not two a day. And if you get together with somebody in the evening for study group, let alone the weekend, because there's always homework. So yeah, you're doing 4, 5, 6, 7 a week. And so when we got to past life regression for those 2 weeks, so yeah, I did a bunch then and some of the other healing work that module offered. And then afterwards, yeah, I've done one-on-one sessions with people. I was just lucky enough to finally get to a Brian Weiss workshop this past summer. And just like 700 people in that room. And he's all guiding us through a past life regression. Like that experience he had with his patient that he wrote about in Many Lives, Many Masters, that was 1980. This guy's been doing it for 45 years. He's in his 80s now. So I was supposed to do a bunch of stuff in 2020, like do a bunch of workshops with him. And I finally got around to, okay, I'm going to make this a priority, make sure I get to his training workshops and his experiences. Because I want to do a 1 day, or I want to do a 3 day, or I want to do his 5 day training. And of course, 2020 happened and that all got shut down. And finally, my schedule allowed this to happen. But I've done everything from one-on-one sessions where I'm experiencing it as my past life regression to groups of 10 people to a Brian Weiss workshop where there were 700 people. We were doing like 2 a day. And so you can create incredible healing around that and gain incredible insights, whether you're focusing maybe on somebody in your life. Why am I so connected to this person, this soulmate, and whether that soulmate ended up being a relationship that needed to end for one reason or another, or is still continuing on, or it was a parental relationship or a good friend relationship or something else, or is it, why do I have this interest? Like for me, I'm Craig Merriweather. You don't get more United Kingdom than that. Scottish and English, and I'm Irish and I'm Welsh and all. It's like I'm like 99.98% British and United Kingdom and Irish and Scottish, and then 1% German and 1% French, like literal, according to my DNA. And yet I have this extraordinary interest and curiosity and passion for the Middle East, for Persia, for Morocco, for India. And why is that? It has nothing to do with my heritage, or certainly growing up in San Diego in the Episcopal Church did not set me up for the interest in the music and the culture and the spirituality of those countries. And so what's interesting about past life regression is, okay, go back to the past life where this interest, this curiosity in these cultures influenced all that. Or there's another great theory that masters in any sort of, let's say, music, anything masterful, took many lifetimes to get that to the level of mastery in this life. This Yo-Yo Ma, considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, cello player alive today in classical music. The theory that to get to that level of mastery that he has took many lifetimes. And there's a lifetime where he sucked at playing the cello. The next life, he was a little bit better. Next life, he was the third cellist in the orchestra. The second time, he just got better and better until in this life, he is Yo-Yo Ma, the great cello player, Meryl Streep. She started off as an actress who wasn't very good and only got the roles of being the walk-on in the play. And now she's one of the greatest actresses and actors of all time. Or Bruce Lee. It took him multiple lifetimes to get that level of mastery of martial arts. So if you have an interest, let's say in painting or maybe photography or science or math or music, where does that interest come from? If you have an interest in a certain culture that maybe is not of your heritage, why? Why is that? And it could be the phrase to get you back there, go back to the past life where I experienced life as a different ethnicity or in a different culture in the world.
When you were having those past life experiences, when you went through that process yourself, did anything come up for you that, if you feel comfortable sharing, did anything come up for you that you were able to heal any sort of trauma, any sort of thing that you were holding on to, you didn't realize that you were holding on to, that you were able to heal or release during those moments, or were you just having a past life regression to see why certain you had certain affinity to certain cultures?
No, there's healing has been done, and you'll have to. I don't mind talking about it. I don't
There's no
know.
pressure if you don't feel
I just
comfortable. It's
I just
personal.
don't off the top of my head remember specifically because sometimes this stuff was like 10 years ago. The one I remember that it just keeps coming up in my head again and again is I have this interest in India, all things India and Hinduism and the music and the food and all of it. And I did a past life. I can't remember if it was about a relationship with my wife or it was about the culture of India. But I've been together with my wife since we were 19. We've been together about 37 years, married for 33 of those years. And I can't again remember if my focus was on our relationship and just to see more about that, or if it was on specifically India. But I went back to a past life where I was in India. I was a drummer, tabla player. I don't know if you ever seen like Ravi Shankar or something. They always have the tabla player. I actually practiced tablas. I was learning tablas, and it was just again fascinated me this instrument. I wasn't ever very good at it, but I was fascinated by it. And in this past life, not only was I the drummer for this dance troupe, my wife was one of the dancers. But there is this, since I was the drummer and musician, I was a lower caste and unable to, even though we had this connection between each other because she was the star dancer or one of them, part of the troupe, and I was the lowly musician drummer, that relationship couldn't blossom as we maybe wanted it to. But what was always fascinated me about that and some of the other past lives I had, I always look like me. And my wife always looks like her. And so I look like an English guy, and she looks like a Norwegian, her German heritage, blonde hair and pale white skin. I said, yeah, but we're supposed to be in India. Everybody else looks Indian. And why do I look like me in this life, and why does she look like her in this life? And I've had conversations with people about this. And the only thing that kind of comes up is again, is that 5D information flowing into a 3D brain. Obviously, if I'm in India and I'm an Indian, I wouldn't look like me. And my German heritage wife wouldn't look like a blonde haired, blue eyed German. But maybe the construct my mind needed to construct so I understand who is who and why is why and what is what, that the 5D information pouring into my brain, being lit up by my pineal gland in order to take that frequency and turn it back into image and sound, needed to portray it like that. So I got it. My understanding of it was fuller. Again, long conversations. And I don't know if you ever find any sort of resolution or answers to these huge questions that we've been talking about, but it's fascinating beyond belief. And that was one of the I talk about that one because that one's just still that was years ago, and that's still fresh in my mind because it's like why do I look like me? And again, it was about our relationship and some of even the issues we have in this relationship, being a long-term relationship from 19 to almost being 60 years old. But
That is interesting that you
yeah,
looked like yourself
yeah,
in India. And a lot of the theories that you talk about in your book, I've come across them. And I
yeah.
like that you put everything together because that's how my brain works. I make connections across different fields like science, anthropology, like all the different things that you mentioned, right? I've also been able to develop theories myself and or what I think probably rings the most true to me. I think the thing with these conversations is that you can't really limit yourself. They continue to expand and expand. Long story short, in hearing you say that, the only thing that I can think of, which I could obviously be completely wrong, is the fact that I don't know, I feel like sometimes our subconscious mind, or if we're getting information from the 5D, I think there's a fine line between showing us what we need to see, but maybe not. shocking us at the same time,
Yeah.
allowing us to see things from a perspective, but also be comfortable viewing that. So that's the one thing that's coming up to me. I don't know your internal world, but if there is a I don't know if there's a block of you seeing yourself as a completely different person, maybe your subconscious mind is going over and beyond to make sure that you look like yourself and your wife looks like herself so you can really understand that it's about you guys in this lifetime, in that life or in that
Yeah.
in that experience. That's the one thing that stuck out to me. Again, that's just a theory, of
Yeah.
course. But I've also had experiences, and this is going to lead to my next question, where I think I've experienced past life flashbacks. I've had a past life regression before.
Mhm.
That was a very interesting experience. But I think I've also had past life flashbacks in my dream state because I get a lot of intuitive and spiritual downloads while in the dream realm or in the sleep state. Long story short, the reason why I think I've had past life flashbacks is because I wasn't myself in the dream. I was myself, but in a completely different body. And I was in a specific time period. And some of those flashbacks felt like they were pretty, what's the word, traumatic, to say the least. And I was always either trying to protect my family or running away from some sort of danger. And it felt like a scene out of a movie. It didn't feel like in the dream state sometimes like you're one place 1 second and then you're in another place and there's no correlation. It just felt like one scene out of a movie within a specific time period and I was in
Yeah.
a different body. So I do believe that was a past life flashback. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, do people need to go to a past life regressionist to experience their past lives or have that past life flashback in order to heal or find out something about what they're experiencing in the present?
Yeah. Extraordinary question. Great question. No, you do not. Certainly, there are what you just experienced, and I had my own kind of spontaneous past life experience, which maybe you want to hear about that. We can talk about that in a second. But like you just had, whether it's in a dream or you're in that theta, not really asleep, not really awake state as you're falling asleep or you're waking up, maybe you get to lounge a bit on a Saturday morning and sleep in, and you're kind of waking up, and all of a sudden it comes to you and forms to you, however it shows up for you. Certainly, there are recordings on YouTube or recordings you can buy from various people who do past life regression. There's Brian Weiss recordings on YouTube you can use. The issue with that, of course, is going to be a bit general. And if something comes up, the recording's not going to be able to check on your ecology, make sure you're okay, and how is this going to get healed? It's just to have the experience. So the reasoning behind doing it with somebody, a past life regressionist, and doing a one-on-one session is to focus on that healing. Now you can certainly have an experience I had it with 700 other people in the same room. Again, it has to be somewhat general, and we all had various different experiences. After the experience, they passed the mic around, and 9, 10 different people talk about their experience, and it's all extraordinarily different. And so you can have that experience. And of course, that happened to be a live experience in a workshop, but Brian Weiss has recordings on YouTube you can listen to, or live recordings like from a workshop that you can listen to and have that experience. It's when you're feeling maybe the anger or the anxiety or the fear or the hurt and the pain is related to a past life. How is that going to get resolved specifically for you? And that's where a past life therapist can help out and because sometimes on your own, whether you're doing it on your own or you're using a recording, you get to that wall or that door won't open, whatever the symbolism is, the metaphor is. Because I've had that happen to people. It's like I can't get beyond the wall, or I can't get over the wall, or I can't get through the door. And that's where a therapist comes in. Okay, what does the wall represent? What does the door represent? Why can't you get through? What if you found a key in your pocket? Whatever the situation may call for, that allows you to move forward because there may be an aspect of your subconscious mind that wants to prevent more hurt and pain. That your subconscious mind is for you. It's not against you. It may seem like that sometimes, but your subconscious mind is for you and it wants to protect you. And so going through the wall, going over the wall, going through the door may imply to the subconscious mind that there's danger on the other side and it doesn't want you to be in pain anymore. So it doesn't want you to go through the door, even though that's the best thing that could happen for you in terms of discovering the past life or discovering the healing that needs to happen or discovering the next aspect of this scene, which is going to inform why you are so angry or dealing with so much anxiety. And so, where you can certainly have, whether you're on your own listening to a recording or you're just doing it on your own, counting yourself down and having that experience. And again, the issue with that is, well, then what if halfway through it you fall asleep because you're so relaxed and so tired and all that? Again, that's where a therapist can be helpful. But you can certainly have a spontaneous experience and not be in the quote unquote sleepy trance state or the meditative like state. And I had that experience with somebody I was on a phone call with. And I was having an experience with a soulmate of mine, somebody who's a close friend that I've known for quite a while. And we're having this time in our lives when we're talking a lot and seemingly needing to resolve some sort of issue. And I wasn't aware of what it was. And I don't think she was either. And there's some other people in her life that all of a sudden started having these coincidences and synchronicities. And my friend started having these dreams, just vague little images that once you put them together, seem to be this kind of World War II incident. And just to make this kind of short, we're having a phone call, we're having a long conversation, and sometimes she would like to meditate together. So it's like you're holding the phone, but it's silent and communicating in that silent meditative way. And we did that. And afterwards, she said, okay, it was fun talking with you. I got to go or whatever. And I just started crying. And I said, I can't find you. And she doesn't know what I'm talking about. She's on the other side of the country. And she said, wait, you can't find me. I said, I'm looking everywhere for you. I can't find you. I'm so sorry. And I'm crying tears. I'm sobbing. And there's also a part of me in my mind that I'm speaking to her on the phone and say, I don't know what's happening here. Meanwhile, this other part is saying all this stuff. And not even multiple personality disorders, there's two halves of me. One is experiencing this seemingly past life, and the other part of me is saying, I have no idea what is going on here. And finally, after she's trying to gain insight into what's happening and ask me questions, and it's like, what do you mean you can't find me? And finally, she said, do you need me to forgive you? And I say, yes. And she says, okay, I forgive you. Genuinely. She's being very sincere because I'm obviously very upset. And then it just ended. I was like, okay. And the heaviness left and the crying stopped. And I said to her, I have no idea what that was. And afterwards, after some months of just other stuff happening, we kind of came to the conclusion that either within our soul family or our soul mates or our soul group, somebody had an experience in that past life. And we were called to that instant to help heal it. It wasn't our specific past life, but part of our soul group needed for this to resolve. And whether they're a part of it or they didn't come back to this life, they're just still healing up in the soul world. And the rest of us decided to come out and create resolution around this by all meeting up at this certain time at this certain place because we had this agreement and we all played our little role. This healing happened in a very unique and strange way, and then it all fell apart. The relationships, and it was wild. It was 10 years ago, and I still longer than that now. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around all of it.
When you say the relationships fell apart, are you talking about the relationship with your friend? after the
Friend on the
healing?
phone. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
guys
No,
stopped being friends?
yeah.
Why? That's so interesting because there was healing there. So at least on healing for you for sure. But
Oh, you really want to get in deep?
if you don't, I love to go deep as
Okay.
long as
So,
you're comfortable.
so I've thought a lot about this. I thought a lot about it because of of what happened over the course of about 6 months, because we hadn't been in touch for a really long time. And I kind of got this cue through a download voice in my head to reach out to her. And she had just joined Facebook like a month before. It was just like the synchronicities and the coincidences started lining up. And I was speaking with her literally a few days later over the phone. And it took some time for this thing to happen. And then after that, it fell apart. But it's like there was wild stuff going on in that while we were empowering this relationship for whatever reason to do this healing work or something else, her life partner, husband, ended up having a heart attack and having been in the ICU. The same week, my wife had catastrophic lung failure and ended up in the ICU in the hospital. And it's just, again, it's okay, maybe that's a coincidence, maybe that's a synchronicity, maybe it's just dumb timing. But on the other hand, it's like after everything else lines up, it starts getting a little dangerous and weird. And one of the things she said to me was, have you ever heard of twin flames? And looking at this over the last 10, 12 years, whatever it's been, the idea around twin flames, I know nowadays it has this connotation of being your ultimate romantic life partner, the one for you. But that's not how it started out. That's a new construct to that word, of that terminology. Sort of they're using it as your super duper soulmate, your primary romantic love of your life soulmate, Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. But in reality, even mentioned in the Michael Newton books, and even all the way back to Plato, who talks about, I'm going to get to that, but the idea around the twin flame is that when we come down to earth as a soul, so me as Craig is inhabited by his soul, you, Jummie, are inhabited by a soul, the people listening, watching are inhabited by a soul, but it's only so much of your soul energy. Other, you, some of your soul energy remains up in the spirit realm, and you only bring down so much energy to incarnate in this earth. Now, it's not always a 50-50 split. It may be 60-40, 60% left up in spirit world, 40% down here. Maybe it's 70-30, somewhere around 85-90%, according to, and this isn't research or anything, but this is just what they say, if you will. When you start bringing 85% down, that's when you start blowing fuses, if you will. And while you can maybe get a lot done in a little bit of time, maybe the rest of things don't go so well because you've blown the system. You bring too little, 20, 25%. Now you're dealing with depression. You're dealing with the inability to focus and move forward and get out of bed in the morning and having to deal with that kind of stuff. So we bring the appropriate amount of energy, or hopefully bring the appropriate amount of energy for what we need to do on earth, or leave the appropriate amount of energy for what needs to happen up in the spirit realm. There's the idea that when we decide to bring energy to the spirit realm, let's say we're going to leave, let's just do 50-50. We're going to leave 50% of our energy up in the spirit realm. We've decided we're going to bring 50% to earth. But you know what? I want to learn and grow. I want to skip a grade. I want this to start happening faster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to incarnate as two and take half the energy into one being and half the energy into the other. That only means that each person, each incarnation as the soul, it has 25%. So you incarnate as two twin flames. It's your soul, same soul energy. It's just not enough. unless you just really, I don't know, bring 80% energy, leave 20% up there, bring 80% down here, twin flame yourself. So now there's 40 in this person incarnation and 40% in that incarnation. Anyway, that's more of the traditional old school way of looking at what a twin flame is. It's part of your soul energy, and that can oftentimes be repellent because they're not supposed to be together. What's the point of being together if you split to learn and grow as other people? And so it's not the romantic Romeo, that's not even the greatest example either, Romeo and Juliet, how that ended, but it's not the super duper fun time romance that has been made out to be. It's that your soul has split in order to learn to grow, to create some sort of healing, maybe, but like magnets repelling each other, it's not going to last and it's not going to work because you'll just implode the thing. And so the idea around it and what happened, and even maybe life partners experiencing the energetic residue of that in a very physical way, it fell apart. And so we found each other, lost each other, came together again, created this extraordinary, weird, different, I don't understand it to this day, healing around something, some experience that maybe others, maybe we had in World War II. And then because of this energy of potentially being twin flames and our identical soul energy, it can continue. So that's a very brief version of it. And it hurts. I like her. She likes me. It's not that we don't like each other. It's not that we had a big drawn out fight or it was a toxic relationship or anything. It was just, and it's just like, it hurts. It sucks.
It's extremely fascinating because
It,
I've heard a lot about twin flames. I've studied it a little bit. I've had conversations with people related to twin flames, and for a while it was so hard to understand the concept because it wasn't hard to understand the concept. I think what I was struggling with is I think a lot of people were trying to create a business out of it, promising everyone that they had a twin flame. And what I've come to understand is that not everyone has a twin flame. Because if you're talking about the fact that it's your soul in two different bodies, what I've heard is that there's a limited amount of twin flames incarnated right now. And a lot of times, like you said, the relationship is not what people think it's supposed to be with this ultimate love story, but it does trigger this huge, massive spiritual awakening for the two people experiencing it. And as you were talking, I was thinking about this whole concept about the spirit versus the soul. And you know how we talked about time and all of our, I don't know if we talked about this explicitly, but the idea about time being a loop and everything is happening all at the same time. So that means all of our lives are happening at the same time. So thinking about that, it makes me think about the fact that, okay, if the spirit is the bucket of water, then each drop of water into that larger bucket of water is a soul, is the soul, it being able to be incarnate, right? So it's like we have multiple drops of water across time that if you were to put all of that together, it flows into that bucket, which is the spirit. And as you were talking, it made me think about the fact that, okay, how my brain is trying to understand it, pulling all different theories together. It's okay, maybe in a specific timeline there are two drops of water from the same spirit bucket of a person, of a being, in the same space time, right? Where it's like, and that doesn't happen for everyone, but it's if I'm having a life somewhere else from a different perspective, I'm not supposed to come in contact with that perspective. So
right.
it kind of sounds okay if some twin flames have they're incarnated and having two different perspectives at the same time. So like you said, it's repelling because that energy is so much. It's like you're literally like your soul, like your spirit is interacting with itself in the same three-dimensional space, which
Yeah.
can be a lot. Again, that just all came to me I don't know if I'm correct. That's just how like
Yeah.
my mind was synthesizing the information.
And yeah, and I don't think there's any definite answers until head back home to Soul World and meet up with everybody and have a cup of soul coffee or something and discuss it all. But in terms of that particular incident is okay, maybe, and that's and what's crazy about it, if it's all happening at the same time, if we're playing this computer games at the same time or it's stacked on each other, that meant I was experiencing that at the same time it was actually happening. It was kind of like that veil got parted and those emotions were real happening at the same time, even though it was maybe 1944 or 1939 or whatever it was. And so that's what gets it gets mind bending about it because of that veil parted, and I experienced that as if I was really experiencing it in 1944, 1939, whatever. Or the other theory is we came here to help heal someone from our soul group or members of our soul group, and all came together at this certain time at this agreed upon time and place to create this healing amongst all of us, and then all and have it, and that was it. It's just a group of people, people get together with to do a play. It's like, okay, we got together and we did this play, and see you later. I gotta go across country and do something else now. This was just meant for that one time.
But
You know?
so in this three-dimensional space, so it sounds like part of why you guys ended up going apart is because obviously both of your spouses found themselves in critical situations with their health. So it felt like you both wanted to maintain the status quo of your life, right? With your
Yeah.
spouses and not blow things up because the energy was just so palpable that it
Yeah.
felt there was like a energetic blowback, which is so fascinating. That's incredibly
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. And again, there's a lot more nuances, and feelings, and people's lives. This we got children involved in
Of
this. We
course.
got other people. It's not the math equation to it was really complex. And you wish this, okay, I wish you want to have that desert island experience. This is put it on the other hand, this really is the other half of my soul, or the other half of my energy. I sent her, this isn't going to work. It can't. Because we're supposed to both learn as different people in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And maybe the whole experience was okay, we need to come. And again, this is all conjecture, and this is just all it's interesting and fascinating, but it's also just it kind of hurts.
Of
Again,
course.
it sucks that this happened this way, but it's one of those things where if the contract was to heal this other experience for others or for ourselves, that's what we came to do.
And
The
that's what
work
it
is
is.
done, and now let's move on with this other stuff. And again, it's all just this could be one of a dozen different theories on what happened. I could be just totally off base about all this, but again, it's like those coincidences, those synchronicities, and this is the only one that
Seems to make sense. Yes.
the theory of everything is the only one that puts all the pieces together, and the only one that makes sense. And I couldn't prove it one way
hmm
or the other, but
Yeah, that
it's
definitely sucks.
unifying theory of everything. That's the only way it kind of all makes sense. And again, and this is 10 years of thinking about this almost constantly.
Oh my God,
Uh, yeah,
yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, it's painful. You talked about have a healed and stuff. I'd forgotten about all this, but it was
Sorry to bring it up back up,
no, that's all
Jonathan.
right. No, it's fine now. I'm fine. But it was 9 years of grief that got
Mm.
lost because it was so extraordinary. If think of the most extraordinary experience of your life and just think, okay, now, and just wishing you could have it again. And I'm sure you have, but it's just
That
like the most extraordinary experience of your life, times it by 1,000. And then it's like, what's the point of the rest of this? It's wow, I had that, and that was pretty extraordinary. What we what happened there, and that's where the spiritual work comes in. It's like chop wood, carry water. It's like it ain't fun.
but then it
It's
makes
chores. So it's like
mm,
okay, tomorrow I got to get up, and what else can I do to help move myself forward, maybe take a couple of people with me along the way to help out. I don't know. Yeah.
It's what you're saying. I've heard a lot of people who've had a twin flame experience describe it that way, and I haven't come across a twin flame, and no offense, but I hope I don't come across a
Yeah.
twin flame
I
because
was just about to say to you, I hope you
it
don't ever
sounds like
experience
an
it.
intense experience. I'm good with a strong soulmate. I'm good with that. But it makes me think about something we didn't touch on, and I was trying to get to the point of wrapping up our conversation. But I have two final questions. I'll start with the first one because this conversation is triggering it, which is the whole idea of soul contracts versus karma. Because I know that people do past life regression to take a look at, are there some soul contracts that I need to release? Are
Mm.
there do I have karmic debt? And in your book, I thought it was interesting that you distinguished between a soul contract versus a karmic debt to be fulfilled. What is the difference, or are they
Oh,
one and the same?
boy, that's a really great question too.
Because
Yeah, I had difficulty with those chapters writing those or those sections of the book or whatever.
can I say something really
Oh,
quickly?
sure. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
just for the listeners. So part of why I'm asking that is because obviously you just talked about your experience with your twin flame, and the healing that happened from that was coming from a past lifetime. So it seemed like
Mhm.
a karmic
Yeah.
release. So
Mhm.
that's part of why I'm asking karmic versus soul contracts.
And this is where it can even those we had, and I'm going to go with my understanding. The word karma, people have various understandings of what that word means. And so, in terms of just really quickly, because again, this is a 5 hour conversation in and of itself, and still wouldn't barely scratch the surface. Karma is the idea that your soul still has lessons that are unresolved or finished. Doesn't mean you're being punished. It does not mean that you've done wrong and therefore need to be corrected in this life. But it could mean that due to situations and circumstances in a past life, you did not develop or learn as well as you could have or should have, if I use the S word. And so this follows you to this next life. Those cords could be seen as karma from a past life. They're still attached to you, therefore causing issues of maybe around emotional upset, around anxiety or anger, things like this. And so, in terms of the karma we carry with us, this also may be, again, this gets into the things of that last life I experienced life. I was a rich person. I was crappy to people. In this life, I experienced it as maybe a person without means who gets crapped on by the rich. And so you have this kind of not so much karmic debt, but this experience of I experienced it this last time, and now to learn and develop, I need to continue that learning and growth and development. It's the same lesson or the overall study program is this concept of what it is to be generous and compassionate and empathetic that may take multiple lifetimes to achieve. Not unlike getting your master's degree. That's going to take several years and maybe several years to write your dissertation, getting your PhD and taking several years to write your dissertation and having all these different experiences and doing all the different research and creating all these different lessons that you must go through to finally present your paper and say, I understand it now. Yeah. So karma can be seen as this linkage or this cord connecting you to past lives because the full lesson has not been learned or you're still moving through it to get to finally say, okay, now I get my master's degree in this aspect of being a soul. Soul contract or the soul agreement, as understood through Michael Newton and others, is the plan of coming down to earth as a soul and what you agree to do to help others or yourself learn and grow. The agreement may include being a parent who has to go through certain experiences, good and bad, difficult and joyful, It may be we need to meet at a certain time and a certain place when we're this years old after so much life experience and energetically create healing around an experience for ourselves or others. The agreement may be, I'm just going to run into you over a semester at school, and we're going to have this intense romantic relationship. And because of that, you'll have these experiences in life afterwards. So the kind of difference really quickly in just a handful of minutes of these deep concepts is that karma can be just the cords that connect us to past lives because the learning didn't happen or the learning continues to happen because it's not finished yet. And the soul contract or the agreement is okay, now that we're coming back to Earth in the 2000s, what roles are we going to play and what needs to happen? Just like a play, the karma is I really need to become a better actor. And through that, I need to do these different plays. The soul contract is okay, we're going to do Richard III. And like the Ian McKellen movie, we're going to decide to do it in the 1930s instead of the 1600s. And that's the contract. It's like these are roles, these are the lessons we're going to learn in this time. And this is hopefully to resolve finally that karma that we've been dealing with for the last 10 lifetimes.
That makes a lot of sense. So if I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, karma is like the overarching theme, and the soul contract is like the ingredient that's part of that overarching theme. Or maybe there's a better way to kind of put it
And yeah, and
together.
the fascinating thing because it's so complex and
Mm-hmm.
even my little brain, it's hard to wrap your head around because again, this is a lot of 5D information trying to be
Synthesize into, well,
intertwined, yeah, between
y-
our 3D brains. Yeah.
yeah, but I think what you're saying is if someone is supposed to learn a lesson about not being jealous, then in the spirit realm, they could get into a soul contract with another being who's okay, I'm going to help you by being someone that you're jealous of so that you can overcome that jealousy. So it's okay, we are in this contract together so that you can learn this karmic lesson. But then again, it becomes complicated because you take karma from lifetime to lifetime, and there are people who are in your soul group that you have pleasant experiences with and people in your soul group that you have more negative experiences with, that and those are the ones who often teach you the lessons that
Yeah.
you need to learn to be able to release certain things that you haven't been able to learn or release from lifetime after lifetime. So I know it is complicated to kind of think about, but
Yeah.
okay.
But it's just even let's say Hamlet, someone needs to play Hamlet, someone needs to agree to play the uncle who kills his father, and there's two people who need to play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern who just kind of walk in and out every now and then. We all have this agreement to play these roles, and somebody has to
Be the
be the
bad guy.
villain sometimes.
Yeah.
The tension, the pressure is oftentimes what creates the healing and growth. And that's where it gets mind twisty and hard to get through sometimes because people go through real hurt and real pain. They suffer real trauma. And that's not to excuse what that person does because you read a book or you hear a podcast and you're saying, oh, it's a soul contract and we're all a soul family, we're a soul group. It's people belong in jail. There are people who need protective orders against others. There are toxic relationships that need to end. It doesn't mean that this is going to be all unicorns and rainbows, but it does. But if you can kind of look at it and hopefully in a safe and gentle way, look at it that I can use these experiences to help me become a stronger, more empowered person using therapeutic techniques like talk therapy, like support groups, like hypnotherapy, like Reiki, like getting massages, doing the self-care work and finding around those events, not only within this life as a human being, as me, as you, as the other people listening, as a human being here, grounded to this earth, but also the spiritual growth and healing and learning that can happen as well. And that's where it gets super complicated. Because again, I don't know if you ever saw that film Interstellar. If any of your watchers or listeners saw that film
Uh,
Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. Extraordinary film. I think it's one of Christopher Nolan's best. And of course, he did the Batman movies, the Dark Knight, and all, and everything else he did. She came out in Inception and all that. But and not to give anything away, but that movie's kind of old, so if you haven't seen it yet, but it's really complicated and strange and weird and all about space and time and consciousness and all, of course, stuff that I it's fascinating about this conversation too. But in the end, you realize, okay, there's 5D information. Again, not to give too much away, but if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about at the very end. There's 5D information in the Tesseract. There's a 5D information that he's trying to get through to a 3D world. Hence the bookshelf, hence the dust on the floor, and hence the watch. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, my God, see it soon because it's so cool and so great. But it's this 5D information that's trying to get pushed through the 3D world, and it's complicated and it can get a little messy. And so I don't think all of this can be understood completely.
Yeah, it's
How's a
ineffable.
3D world, how's a 3D brain going to understand completely a 5D experience?
Yeah.
I don't mean that 5D experience in the way a lot of it's being used in the metaphysical realm right now. I'm just like
Yeah, I get what you mean.
trying to say, okay, imagine 5D and now it's 3D.
It's a
The
much higher
wiring isn't
dimension.
there.
Yeah.
And so
The
your
language
brain,
isn't there.
yeah, and the brain has to create pathways for you to understand this information. Hence, sometimes maybe it's using symbolism and metaphors in the past life regression where you think, oh, that's not going to, I know that didn't happen in the 16th century, so it's not real. But it's your brain trying to get you to understand or tell the story in a way that your brain's going to understand it from this
Hmm.
5D flood of information coming down the funnel that you now have to try to recreate in a 3D brain. And so, in terms of a lot of the learning and the growth and the development, I don't think we can totally understand what it is we're here for ultimately, or the roles being played by the people, or sometimes even the trauma we've been through. Other than I've been through this extraordinarily difficult and horrible situation. What can I do for my heart and my soul, my brain, my body to heal? And maybe that's all that needs to happen. Full understanding of it, why it happened, the karma involved. Maybe it's too much. Maybe that's too much baggage right now. Maybe it's what can I do today to expand my heart and to help heal my nervous system and not worry about the larger aspect of soul growth and development. That's happening. Just like the subconscious mind can heal that cut on your finger. Your soul knows what to do and it's working in the background to make that happen. And you have these people coming in and out of your life, difficult or pleasurable. But what can you do today, right now, in this moment, to maybe just be a better person for yourself? Be kind to yourself, be compassionate to yourself, let alone the people around you, let alone the community, let alone the world.
Yeah, it
You
starts
know,
with you.
yeah, it starts with you, and again, the larger picture can be so complicated, and even everything we said today can be like, or maybe not.
But I'm at the point now where when it comes to this work, I think there are different levels of dimensions. There's different states of dimensional realities. I think also there are different layers of truth. And I think when it comes to past life regression, reincarnation, karma, soul contracts, the why of it all, because I think to your point, it's very convoluted. Unfortunately, I've been burdened with the unquenchable curiosity to gain as much knowledge as possible in the realm of metaphysics. But I do think what you said is very relevant to most people. Sometimes these conversations, they're important to listen to, but we can't spend too much time trying to dig everything and try to find out all the answers. But the point I'm trying to make here is I've come to understand that a lot of these theories, I'm arriving at a yes and when it comes to karma and soul contracts. And that's because I've been getting into a lot of David Icke's work, which
Yeah,
I don't know if you're familiar with his work, and I don't want to open that can of
yeah,
worms
right.
right now. But I think my thoughts around soul contracts and karma and reincarnation are definitely becoming a lot more nuanced. So, yeah, but I wanted to ask really quickly before I ask you your shift in perspective and we kind of work towards the end of our conversation, for people who are listening, because I'm sure some people are listening and they're skeptical about the whole past life regression, and it's important to be a skeptic. I'm still a skeptic in many ways, but I bring that up to ask, how does someone get ready for past life regression? So, for example, if I'm a skeptic and I'm going to you, because sometimes people are cynical and they're like, I just want to see if this works, but they're still a skeptic. Does
Yeah.
someone actually have to believe in the possibility and the therapeutic nature of a past life regression in order to actually be able to have that experience?
I
And
don't. And okay. What's the end?
sorry, the other part
Other.
of that is just in general, how does one prepare themselves to enter a past life regression?
Again, all great questions to a session. That's interesting because I don't know if I've ever encountered anybody who was coming just to test, like the heckler who pays a ticket and just to heckle the comedian. Like, why? Why would you do that? It's like the same with that. It's like, I think it's doubtful a person would take the time and the money just to prove that they can't do it or that it's fake. I think this attracts people in a certain part of their life where, yeah, there's curiosity, certainly, but there is hope or at least a thread of belief. And therefore, that's what all you need. And you'll have an experience. So it's really about your intention. If your intention is to prove that it doesn't work and that you can't be quote unquote hypnotized or regressed into a past life, what are the chances it's going to work? Just if somebody says, is a smoker, and he said, I don't want to quit smoking, and I don't even believe that hypnotherapy could work anyway, what are the chances that it's going to work? If they come to, for whatever reason, they're going to pay all the money to do a session to quit smoking, what are the potential? One, they don't want to quit, and two, they believe it's not even going to work. What are the chances that they're going to quit smoking? Zero to none. And so with a past life regression, somebody's so skeptical and they believe, yeah, no, this in this life it's just a one and done, and there is no afterlife. They've already put up the walls. Now it's possible their subconscious mind says, oh no, you don't either, and wants them to have that experience. So whether their higher self, that kind of super conscious level of mind, even their subconscious mind is saying, is tapping on the shoulder and the intuitions are going, I'm gonna show this person that I can't be moved into a past life regression. Even if they have that experience, the doubts are gonna go, yeah, I bet I was just making that up, or that wasn't real, and this is my dream state creating a story. And even if, again, you look at it that way, it's the Carl Jung experience of, okay, yeah, but why that? If somebody experienced, yeah, being back in the Civil War, okay, then why the Civil War though? And why were you on that side? And why did your musket jam? And why did you have, and why did you run away instead of running forward? Why did you come up with that elaborate story your subconscious mind had to come up with? What's the symbolism? What's the metaphor? What's the allegory? What's the story being told there? And it's just that crazy thing of somebody, let's say they're totally into the Civil War, or like the people are into World War II, and they research and they watch the Kim Burton documentaries over and over again, and they try to get all the nuances and read all the books and get all the history around it. And they just focus on the Civil War, and they even do reenactments, and they have their uniform, and they just have long discussions online about the Civil War and what would have happened if only Washington didn't cross the Delaware. And then they go to a past life regression, and lo and behold, they're back in the Civil War. And they get out of that. That's disappointing because, of course, I love the Civil War. Since I was a kid, my dad got me that Civil War set because I was talking about it all the time. And ever since then, I've just collected stuff. Of course, I'm going to have a past life regression, but it's that topsy-turvy idea of you have this passion for the Civil War and the history of it and learning more about it. And then you have a past life regression where you're in the Civil War. Did you have a past life regression because you're so interested in this current life in the Civil War, or are you so interested in the Civil War in this current life because you had a past life in the Civil War? What's the link to that? Which way does it go? and which way does it flow? And I don't think you could ever say to any certain extent one way or the other, but it gets a little mind bendy. And in terms of being skeptical about it, I think that I'm skeptical about most of this stuff. It's just like learning more about it and opening up to it. I've expanded the interest I have in the metaphysical bookstore. I used to just like this one section. And then I slowly grew as I learned, and I grew as a human being and in my own spiritual life to like, okay, just these sections, these 4 sections. The others are just ridiculous. And then I started opening, and now as I'm getting later on in life, that's pretty much a lot of the bookstore. There's a couple of sections that I still scratch my head at and I wonder about. But it's because of my own growth and learning as a human being, I understand that. When I was 18, I didn't believe in past life regression. I thought that was ridiculous because of my upbringing. So what are the chances I would have had a past life regression? And as I learn and grow and expand into it, I think I remove those blocks and I remove those walls. And you had an and in there. And I forget what
I
it
think you pretty much answered it about,
was.
is there like some sort of preparation that
Oh,
someone has
preparation.
to
That's
do?
what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, yeah. When I have a conversation with somebody, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody over the phone or email or something about past life regression and what you're interested in looking at. What I do is I send, if you think my conversations about past life, you should see my emails. So I'll send you an email and say, here's how it's going to work. And what we're looking for is your focus, kind of the channel you want to turn to on your TV. Or back in the day, the 1970s, our internet was the Encyclopedia Britannica. It was 34 volume set of A to Z of all the information. That was all the information in the world. And if you just pick a book off the shelf of your Encyclopedia Britannica, you're looking at the napkin or the invention of the fork, and it's not very interesting. But if you know that you want to look at polar bears, you know what book to look at. If you want to look at kangaroos, you know what book to look at. If you want to look at anteaters, you know exactly what book and where to look. And so that's why we want to focus. And even if it's as quote unquote general as go back to the past life that is most influencing your current life, that's the focus. Your subconscious mind or your superconscious level mind, your higher self knows what information to pull and what life to bring in. And that's important. And that's something to think about. And you might not even really know, or maybe you might change your mind at the last minute, which is fine. You might not really nail that down until 5 minutes into our conversation at the beginning of the session. But it's if you've never done this work before of hypnotherapy, of meditation, and you're curious about it, and you read Brian Weiss's book, I'd probably send you some recordings just to listen to, some more hypnotherapeutic recordings. And that one gets you used to my voice and allows you to feel this relaxed state of mind and body as related to my voice, because you're hearing this recording maybe a few times before, hopefully maybe even every day before your session. But in terms of preparing, it's just coming with an open heart and willing to have the experience that your higher self wants you to have. I think the biggest trip up people have is that they read a book by Brian Weiss or they read Dolores Cannon or something else, and you think, oh, that's the experience I'm going to have. Understand, Brian Weiss has been doing this work since 1980. Michael Newton had 40 years of experience. Dolores Cannon had somewhere the same. They worked with thousands upon thousands of people. They're talking about one person. Brian Weiss is talking about one person that Many Lives, Many Masters. Some of his other books, he's talking about 7, 8, 9 different people. Of the thousands of sessions he's done, he's talking about 5 or 6. Everybody has a different kind of experience, how your higher self wants you to have that experience. It may come like you're actually walking through that life, like your point of view, like you're actually there, like a quote unquote 3D experience, like you're having a dream, but you're that person in the dream walking around, interacting with people, talking to people. It may be like you're standing off to the side, like you're an interested observer, and you see yourself and you see the other people involved, and you're kind of just watching it, like on the sidelines. Maybe like you're sitting in a movie theater and watching it on the screen. Maybe you just hear a narration while you see vague images. Maybe it's too intense. Maybe it's Normandy Beach And it needs to be a bit vague because that's a pretty unsafe place to be and pretty intense. So maybe you just, okay, I had the experience in Normandy Beach. I don't need to relive that and see that. And so I'll just have vague images and understand what is happening. And so the biggest thing I try to get through to people, you'll have the experience you're supposed to have, which may not be the Brian Weiss book experience. That was just one person's experience out of thousands he's done over decades of work with people. Same with Dolores Cannon or Michael Newton or Ian Stevenson or the other people. And so in terms of preparing for this, if you've never done this kind of work before or have had an experience like this, I send some recordings to practice with, just like maybe moving healing light through the body or something else like that. And then just have the expectation that your higher self, your inner wisdom will give you the experience you need to have, which may be different than the one you'll have 6 months later. But you'll have the experience you're supposed to have in the way you're supposed to have it. And just be open to that. And understand you have days, weeks, and months to analyze all the information. When I'm in an experience, I'm like, why am I me and not of Indian descent? Or why? So don't worry about it. Just bring in as much information as you can, explain it to me as best you can while I'm recording it. And I'm leading you through the experience and then moving to the next important event. And then you have the rest of your life to try to figure it out. The experience of it is just like you're having a daydream or you're remembering that vacation you took 10 years ago to Hawaii or Paris or wherever. You're just remembering. And again, whether that memory is like you're actually there, you're just seeing it like pictures or something else will come to you in the way it's supposed to come to you. But the biggest thing is, what is your focus? What is your intention? Is it a healing? Or have you been, people will come, I've been struggling with so much anger and I've been to so much talk therapy. I've been just doing so much Reiki and nothing seems to rid myself of this anger. And I read a Dolores Cannon book and I think this might be past life regression. I don't really believe in it, but it made so much sense to me. My intuition is telling me I should try this. That's perfect. That's all you need. You just need that little glimmer of maybe hope or that thread of belief. And that's enough to allow your higher self to open up to extraordinary healing and an extraordinary experience. And maybe just, yeah, I just, my friend did it and it sounded so much fun. And they found so much interesting information about who their friends are and their husband or wife or whatever. And I just want to experience that. I thought it sounds pretty cool. Or I'm so great at playing the guitar. I wonder if that, or the violin or something. I wonder if
What life that's come.
a past life about that.
Yeah.
So it's really your intention, and it may be just curiosity. That's it may be extraordinary healing you're looking for because you've been in pain and you've been hurting for so long. Or like, why do I keep attracting the same relationship over again? What is that all about? Is there some karma I need to resolve? There's all these nice people in my life, yet I'm not attracted to them. I'm attracted to the person who ends up cheating and leaving. Right. Why do I keep doing that?
That's what's so cool about past life regression. You can go down different avenues, whether it's healing, whether it's understanding your patterns, whether you're just curious to know what lives you left in the past and to see what comes up. There's just so many ways to have that experience, so many things to get from that experience, I should say. So that's fascinating and amazing. And like I said, I've had one before and it was a cool experience, very interesting, because at one point I felt like my higher self was speaking through me and I was in the back. I could hear everything that they were saying, but it felt I was connected to them, but it just felt like a different version, different part of me that was from a higher dimension. But I will save that story for a different time. I have to ask you, Craig, have you shifted in perspective on anything recently? And I ask this question to all my guests because I feel like we're constantly shifting. So if you have anything to share, please feel free.
I think I had a big shift in perspective and just in terms of my own spiritual growth. And a lot of it had to do with the experience I talked about a little bit ago. And for the longest time, I just felt like I was kind of done. Maybe that was it. And I don't know what it was, but maybe it was writing this book. I don't know. There's something that has re-energized my interest in learning, because I'd kind of put it aside because it hurt, that whole experience. I would do it again tomorrow, knowing how much it was going to hurt for 9 years afterwards, how much I missed it, and how much I craved to have that intensity again. But I just in like the last 6 months or so, and maybe it was like in the middle of writing this book, and I think it was this I had to write this book for me, and I know this kind of sounds cliched and all that, but I just thought I'd write a book about past life regression and help spread the word and tell people more about how I'm focusing more on the spiritual side of this work now. And I think because of all the research I was doing, all the questions I was asking, all the doubt I had about stuff, the research I'd done around holographic universe theory, the multiple dimensions, the computer simulation theory on top of memory and consciousness, and the pineal gland, and what the hell are those crystals in the pineal gland all about? It opened up healing for me around that past issue and some other things as well that has, I don't know, leveled up is the right word. That sounds obnoxious, but that's moved me towards the next lesson. Like that settled, and I renewed and restored and rested. And now because of the learning and the research and the writing and putting the book together, I now feel ready in terms of my perspective of who I am and what I need to do. I wish I could say something more about, oh, it's all about the world and love. And
No, that's
but
good. I
it's
think
me. But that's what I've been noticing the last, I don't know, 5, 6 months, whatever it's been, that it's that spark is there again
that's all.
to the kind of rest I needed, or the rejuvenation I needed, or enough time turned a certain age. I don't know. That it's time again, and it's time to start moving forward.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But the question, have you shifted in perspective, is supposed to be a personal shift. So it is supposed to be you.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Craig. Where can people find you if they want to purchase your book? Again, it's the Past Lives
Um,
Guidebook, which is an awesome book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Um, or could,
Past Lives Guidebook is on Amazon. You can find it there. That's probably the simplest and fastest and easiest way to get it. And you can find me at Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy. That's the easiest way. And that's probably the easiest way to find me.
okay.
I'm on the socials and things. I'm just trying to build that stuff up. So you'll see more and more of me on doing little videos and things. But right now, probably the best way is just the website. And I'm happy to talk with you about this. As you can tell, our 90-minute interview, I like to
It,
talk about this stuff.
it's
And I can
even
go
more
on
than
and on
that.
and on.
Yeah. No worries. This is a very hefty topic,
Yeah.
and we can go on for such a long time. There are so many questions here that I didn't even get a chance to ask you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
well,
is a pretty in-depth topic to go down. So I appreciate you going down the different rabbit holes and giving such thought out questions. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show, Craig. Thank you so
thank
much.
you, Jummie. I appreciate you not only asking the questions, but listening to my topsy-turvy, twisty-turny answers that probably left more questions than answers. But I've enjoyed talking with you, and I hope we can do this again pretty soon.
Absolutely.